Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today we have another great guest. As our ongoing subscribers know, often on this podcast, I will be sharing ideas, insights, and best practices for building professional relationships and excelling at business networking. Occasionally, however, I'll be interviewing subject matter experts, authors, speakers, thought leaders, and social scientists. These people share their knowledge to help us build those relationships and understand why we do the things we do. Today on the program, I have Greg Roche. He's the author of The Fast and Easy Guide to Networking for Introverts: How to Connect Without Going to Events, Making Cold Calls, or Sending Spammy Emails. He's also a husband, father, and entrepreneur. Greg, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Great to be on, Frank.
Well, I want to hear the journey. I know the journey because you sent me, we met on LinkedIn and I looked at your profile and I'm like, okay, I got to get this guy on my podcast. And, but you had sent me some information about yourself. And so I have privy to it, but I want you kind of share where this journey started.
Yeah, it started where a lot of people's journeys have started, and that was with a job elimination. Back in 2012, I went to my job one day. It was actually in the afternoon. I walked in after lunch and my boss walked in and said, I'm eliminating your position. And I'd worked at that company for 9 years. I had spent 9 years growing my career. I had been promoted steadily and had moved up to a position in human resources right below the chief human resources officer. And the company was changing. It was getting smaller. This was, again, kind of tail end of the recession in the mid 2000s, coming out of it. But the department was changing. My role got eliminated. And just like that, I needed to go find a job. And what I realized was I didn't know how to go find a job. I had been out of the game for a while. And one of the big things I didn't have was a network, or at least I didn't think I had a network. I just had not spent any time connecting with people. I always had this feeling in my head that if I go to work and do a really good job, I'll never be the one that gets fired and I won't need to worry about it. And part of that was I, as an introvert, don't like to go to networking events. I walk into a room full of strangers and I find the nearest corner and I back into it. And I hope somebody maybe will take pity on me and come talk to me. But I'm not the person who goes and makes the introduction and just starts talking to people randomly. It's not something that feels very comfortable to me. So I had to find a different way to network. And I started reaching out to people I knew. I started connecting with them slowly but surely, made enough connections to find another job. So I landed a new role within about 3 months. But the thing I really took away from it was how much work it was to get that network started, and how I never wanted to be in the position of feeling like I needed to find a new job and I didn't know who to call. So I spent the time after that continuing to network, right? I had a new job. I was doing well in that and I was growing in my career, but I always kept trying to connect, trying to meet people, trying to learn what other people were doing in my industry and other industries. And as I went through the years, I found other opportunities in other roles. Again, my career was growing and these opportunities found me, and they found me because I was continuing to network. And I had some other people start to ask me, hey, you seem to be connected. You seem like you know people, people know you, you're getting these opportunities. What's your secret? And I started sharing it in posts on LinkedIn or posts online. I started to do some webinars. I started to do some group coaching programs, and I started to tell other people about it. And I started to see it worked for other people, not just for me. And it kind of connected with a certain group of people. And those were people that were like me, didn't really like to go to events or didn't feel comfortable doing that. And so I just thought, there's got to be a way I can help more people with this. It seems like when you go look for information on how to network, a lot of it has to do with, preparing in advance for an event, finding the right event, making sure you know who's going to be there, create a pitch, find a way to make a connection and then follow up. And all of those are good advice. It's not that the advice is bad. It's just, it doesn't apply to a lot of people. And if you're a person who's not going to go to an event anyways, it's not really going to be that useful. So I kind of started to write down all of the things I had been teaching. It started to come together in a book format. And so last fall, I was able to actually publish my book that you said, The Fast and Easy Guide to Networking for Introverts, and put that out in the world. And so I've really just been trying to speak to as many people as I could and let them know either about the book or what I do so that I can help other introverts or other people who may not like to go out in networking events, or who for the past year haven't been able to go to networking events because there haven't been any of them. And so this stuff applies not just to introverts but also people who just can't get together with people in big groups because of the pandemic. And so that's really kind of what I've been trying to do recently, and have been learning. There's a lot that I knew there were a lot of people out there, but again, I've been meeting new people and finding new ways to help get this information into their hands.
Not to give the book away, people, you need to buy the book, The Fast and Easy Guide to Networking for Introverts, how to connect without going to events, making cold calls, or sending spammy emails. What are some of the tips that you give to people? What are some of the things you've journaled through the years? Mm-hmm. Insights you can share?
One of the first things I encounter when I talk to people about this is I usually will start with a statement, and I'll give the statement to people and I'll say, fill in the blank. And the statement is, I know I need to network, but, and they'll say a lot of different things. They'll say, I don't know anybody, I don't have time. And one of the things they'll say is, I'm not looking for a job. And I try to tell people, you need to be networking before you need to look for a job. And there's a lot of other reasons to network besides finding a job. That's the one we think of, but there are a lot of other reasons. And so the first thing I tell them is 3 reasons why you should network, even if you're not looking for a job. The first is gaining knowledge. Other people who do what you do, or other people in your industry, have probably solved problems you have or that you're encountering in your current role. And whether you're an employee or a business owner, you are trying to solve problems every day. There's somebody out there that's probably already solved it. Why reinvent the wheel? And as you meet people and you network with them and you build professional relationships, you can ask them, hey, how did you deal with this? Now, you might think I can go online and I can ask some random forum that question and maybe get an answer, but don't you want to really know the quality of the information you're getting? Don't you want to know the person? And don't you want them to know you so they trust you enough to maybe give you some of their, I'll call them secrets. And I'm not saying industry, confidential company knowledge. I'm just saying, if you know somebody, they're more likely to share what they know with you. And that's a good reason to network. Another reason is to find talent. So not you looking for a job, but people you might want to add to your team. Again, whether you're an employee or a manager or whether you have your own business, you want to find good talent. It's a lot easier to find it if you've built a relationship with people and you know what they can do. And then you can say, hey, you want to join my team? They know you too. And so it's a lot easier interaction if you've built that professional relationship in advance. And then the last one is that career insurance. And that's what I call it, because no matter what you're doing, again, whether you're an employee or in a business, you never know what's going to happen. And I think we just got a really, really good example of that this past year in 2020. Who in the end of 2019 knew what was coming? Nobody could have even anticipated that. And entire industries went away in the space of a couple of weeks and have not come back. And if you didn't have a network, if you didn't have anybody you had been connected with, you were starting from scratch. And so even if you're in a role and you love your job today and your boss is great and your team is great and you love what you're doing, things can change. Companies can be purchased. Your boss could get a dream role doing something else and move on, and you get a new boss that maybe you don't connect with, or who knows, the whole industry could go away. And so having that network provides that insurance policy so that you can go out and find the next opportunity. Or even if you own a business and something happens to your business, you'll have a head start on finding that next opportunity. So those are some reasons I give to people why they need to network, even if they're not looking for a job.
Well, that's all solid. I guess if somebody comes at you and says, listen, well, obviously you're busy. Mm-hmm. How do you fit it in? How do you overcome that objection for yourself? Because it's easy to say, geez, it's 6:00. I am beat.
Yep. Yeah. The I don't have time objection is a really common one, and the reason it is because people think about networking in terms of going to that networking event. So they think about getting in their car or getting on the train or however they get there, traveling to the event, getting out, parking, going in, filling out a name tag, walking around for an hour, trying to talk to somebody, and coming home and doing all that. And in their mind, that's hours of time. I propose that you don't go to the event and that you network in different ways. And the way in which you do that, you can break this down into really, really small steps that take less than 15 minutes a day. The key is you have to do it consistently. If you do something for 15 minutes one time, it's probably not going to make a lot of difference.
Right.
I think of it a lot like working out or focusing on your fitness. If you go to the gym one time for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or even an hour, it's probably not going to make you that much healthier. But if you go a little bit each day, over time, you're going to build up. Same thing with networking. If you connect with one person, that's great. But if you don't continue to do that day after day, your network's not going to grow. So part of the objection of I don't have time is to make it smaller, but focus on the consistency over time and make it a habit in your life. When people say I don't have time, I usually challenge them. I say, change what you just said and say, it's not a priority, because that's really what you're saying. I mean, we all have the same amount of time. It's our priorities that dictate what we do and what we don't do. So if networking is not a priority, I understand it. I get it. That's fine. But if you tell me, no, it is a priority, I need to build my network, then you will find the time. If you think of it as, I'm going to put this first, I'm going to spend 15 to 30 minutes on it a day, or maybe even 5. I don't really care how much time you spend, as long as you spend a little bit of time on it every day. And I kind of been talking a little bit about, how I do it. And like you said, it's all in the book, but I can break it into 5 quick steps and not give away the whole thing. But really, this is what I tell people. So we'll go through the process here. The first thing is, I tell people to start with who they know. And that seems like, well, that's not growing my network. And I get that. But if you think of everybody you've ever met, how did you meet them? Most likely you met them from somebody else. So we're going to start with who we know, because eventually they're going to introduce us to somebody new. So start with who you know. Go back through, especially if you've had jobs or interacted with a lot of people in your career. Those people all probably work other places now. And I will tell people to go through even their family and their friends. Start with coworkers who they used to work with, maybe they don't work with anymore. Maybe they're people they've done business with, but they've lost contact with. And it's a concept called dormant ties. It's people we know, but we've kind of lost contact with a little bit. But go back and reconnect with those people and reach out to them. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You're just going to reach out and say, hey, you crossed my mind the other day. I was wondering how you've been. What's new? Maybe it's an email. Maybe it's a LinkedIn message. It's really informal. It doesn't have to be I would even recommend don't write a big long email, because they're likely to not respond. But if you just reconnect and say, how's it going? And see if they respond. Now, again, remember, these aren't strangers. These are people you've worked with. These are people you know. So these are people that when your email lands in their inbox or their message lands in their LinkedIn messages, they're going to say, oh, I remember Greg. Let's what's he doing today? And so they're more likely to respond. you've gotten kind of past that trust a little bit, and so you don't have that barrier to overcome. And once you do that, you're going to want to connect, and maybe you'll trade some emails, but you really want to get to a voice-to-voice conversation, whether that's in person or video call or even on the phone, good old-fashioned phone call. And just kind of check in and catch up, and what are they doing? And the key here is you need to spend more time listening to them than talking to them. Listen to what's going on with them. Listen to what they're challenged with. Listen to what's going on in their life. And as you're listening, you're going to be thinking about, how do I give them something? Okay, so this is really key. Like, what can I give to this person? It could be a piece of advice. I had that problem too. Here's what I did. A recommendation, like you should listen to this book, or on tape, or read this book, or you should listen to this podcast, or you should watch this documentary, or you should go to this site and check this out. I think it will help you. Or even an introduction. Who do you know that you could introduce the person to? But what can you give to the person? And this is really, really key for people who feel awkward when they're networking, or they feel like it's all about taking advantage of people, or they've had experiences where they've been taken advantage of. So if you come into this with a mindset that you're going to give before you receive anything, it helps you get past that feeling of awkwardness. So again, you've found somebody you used to work with, or you've reconnected with them, you've talked to them, listened, you've found out how you can help them, and then you've given them something. They're going to come back to you likely and say, man, you've been such a great help. What can I do for you? And this is where you want to be really specific with what you're trying to do with your networking. Maybe you're trying to just learn about a new industry, or maybe you're trying to actually get a job and you've got a list of companies that you would love to work at. Or maybe you run a business and you need to figure out who is a partner you could work with. But the more specific you get with what you're looking for, the easier you'll be to help. And the easier you are to help, the more likely you are to get help. So you want to be really specific, even if it's like, could you introduce me to this person and give the name? Or could you introduce me to somebody at this company, or one of these companies, or this industry? All you're really asking for here is some sort of introduction. You're trying, again, make it as easy as possible. You're not saying, hey, here's my resume, could you give it to somebody who might give me a job? That's being really hard to help. So if you can stay away from that and just try to get the introduction, that person that you know, who already knows you, probably already thinks highly of you, is going to introduce you to somebody they know. And because of that introduction and the trust that carries with it, you're going to meet somebody new. And then you're going to start this process all over again, right? And the last piece of it is like what I said before, is you need to make this a habit and something you do every day. Because the process I walked you through, if you just do that one time, great, you might meet one new person. You don't do it again, your network's not going to continue to grow. So that's really the real quick summary of what I'll tell people. And you notice none of that required you to go anywhere, right? It didn't require you to go to an event. You didn't have to talk to any strangers, and you didn't have to send all sorts of like cold emails or cold calls out into the world. And when I explain it to people, they're like, oh, of course, that makes perfect sense. There's nothing crazy about that. There's nothing like it's rocket science about that, but people aren't doing it. And that's the thing is when people start to do that, they find, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it was. And if I keep doing that, I'm going to continue to meet people and grow that network for all of those reasons that I explained at the beginning, to find knowledge, to find talent, and for the career insurance aspect of it.
No, I think that's all very powerful. A phrase that comes to mind, a friend of mine uses, it's all common sense, but not common practice, is really what it boils down to. And years ago, I did a lot of educating people on using LinkedIn. And I told people you need to put 100 hours into LinkedIn over the course of a year. It's 20 minutes a day, and it's then when people start to realize, okay, 20 minutes, I can,
find 20 minutes.
Yeah, I can find 20 minutes.
Yep.
But you're right. It's a matter of priority. It's really all it is.
Yeah. The other way I break it down for people is if you've got something you want to do and you're like, I can't get started because it's going to take too long. I always go with 15 minutes. And the reason I pick 15 minutes is it's just a little bit more than 1% of of your day.
Yeah.
There's 1,440 minutes in a day. And if you take 1% of that, it's about 15 minutes. If you could spend 1% of your day on something, right? That's pretty doable. I mean, yes, you've got a lot of percentage on sleeping and eating and working and all those things, but just 1%, can you do that like each day? And if you do that, you are going to have more people in your network interacting with you than you can really handle. And then you are going to have to say, hey, no, I can't do that. Or maybe it's going to take a little bit longer, but that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And you can always control that, right? I mean, you can dial down your connections and your number of outreaches and stuff like that. You can control that. But if you start doing that, and like you said on LinkedIn, if you go on LinkedIn and spend 20 minutes a day just looking at people who are interesting and like commenting on their things, and not generic comments like that's a great post or thanks for that, but adding insight to the conversation. I mean, people are going to start connecting with you. They're going to start following you. They're going to start reaching out to you. And, who knows what's going to come up in terms of opportunities. And so that's just, it doesn't take a lot, but it's something that and the other analogy I use is it's like a garden, right? I mean, I can go out and plant seeds in my garden today, but they're not going to just come up on their own, and they're not going to come up tomorrow. I'm going to have to water them. I'm going to have to weed the garden. I'm going to have to take care of it. And it's going to take a lot of care every single day for those seeds to grow and turn into something. And it's not going to bear fruit for weeks or months. But if I don't do any of that stuff over time, they're just going to die there in the ground. So you really have to, again, think of it as something you grow. And I like to say, think of your network not as something you build, because that seems like I can go do it in a weekend. I could work really hard and build it fast. But it's something you grow and something that takes time and something you got to spend more time on until it really becomes what you want it to become.
Great. Let's shift gears here. You've written this book. Obviously, go out. So I'm sure it's on Amazon. The Fast and Easy Guide to Networking for Introverts. How to connect without going to events, making cold calls, or sending spammy emails. You speak. What other sorts of things do you do? You have workshops that you work with people on, one-on-one coaching? You want to, I guess, elaborate on it? I don't need a yes or no answer.
Yeah, sure. No, yeah, I will do, from time to time, I'll do webinars. Usually those, I post those on LinkedIn. I'll sometimes do like, hey, I'm going to do a free webinar. I'll walk through an hour, kind of what I just talked about, maybe in some more detail. And then I'll also do group coaching programs where people can come in and we'll do 4 weeks usually, and it's about 1 hour a week on the calls. And then there's assignments in between. So I'll say, these are I want you to reach out to X number of people in the next week and do just what we talked about. And then they come back. And what I found works really well, there's the power of that is you have other people coming back and saying, well, this is what worked. This is what didn't work. This was my experience. And, if people are hesitant, it helps them see other people do it. It also keeps them accountable and start working on this. And then it also, is great for me because a lot of it is them talking to each other about what worked and what didn't. And I'm just there to kind of guide the group along. So that is something I'll do from time to time. Again, it's something I would be announcing either on LinkedIn or on my website. And if people are interested in that, they can connect with me and let me know they're interested in the next group. I also do presentations. I did a presentation yesterday to a group that does professional development. So it was a corporate presentation. So they were talking to some future leaders or some people that were new managers and new leaders. And we talked about networking in terms of how do you use networking to grow in your career, even if, again, you're not looking for a job and you just want to become a more effective manager. Part of being a manager, like I said, is finding other managers who have dealt with the same things you're dealing with. And a lot of first-time managers will not know how to deal with a difficult employee or not know how to deal with some situations that come up. So internally networking within your organization so that you can get those answers and get some help and assistance. So those are some of the other kind of things that I've been doing. And then, of course, talking to people like you to, like I say, get the information out there into the world.
What's your website? We get that out there and we'll get it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, it's just my name. It's gregsroche.com. So it's Greg, Gregs, as in Sam, Roche.com. And it's just my website. The book is on the front page. And then you can also see my blog and some of the other writing and speaking things that I've done out there. And I've done a lot of different things. I mean, it's not all networking. I'm an HR professional as well. And so I've done some other stuff around human resources and corporate human resources. So you can go see what I'm working on now and any of the other projects I've got going on.
Well, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience. And again, like I said, kind of get this information out there. I find as I look around the internet and the other sources, there's a lot of good information. Like I said, it's not wrong. It just doesn't apply to a lot of people that are not going to be going to events and they need to find another way and they're not really sure where to start. So I think, different ways to do it for different people. And I don't find a lot of other information out there that kind of articulates it in this way. So that's why I wanted to make sure I got it out there in the world.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.